Hello and welcome to A Critical Dragon, where I talk about narrative in film, television, and in books. And today I want to talk about Janny Wurts, The Ships of Merior, Book 2 of the Wars of Light and Shadow, because it's been a while since I had a look at text on screen, went through it, and talked a bit about the techniques and some of the things that are going on in the actual text. And this is an excerpt from the books that is available on Janny Wurts' website, and I'll put a link to that in the description below. And it's not going to spoil any of the story for you. It's two pieces of the short extract that is up on the website, and it's not giving away any major details. So there are no spoilers here. This is just to talk about how Wurts evokes certain things, is using point of view, is using the subjective perspective of characters, is using the white space on the page. Well, when I say white space, black space, because I view everything in dark mode, because ordinary light mode is just really horrible and hard on my eyes. Everything should be in dark mode. It should be the natural default, not as much glare. But anyway, let me bring this extract up, and I'm going to talk through it. So I've broken the extract up into two pieces, and it's not the full extract that's on the website, it's just a short section from it. Garfield's captain twisted in his saddle and paused as someone he did not recognize plunged headlong into the idle ranks of guardsmen. A shout followed, and a roil of sudden turbulence. Then the runner burst through, streaming water and spattered with black mud. The sweat-limp shirt on his heaving shoulders billowed at the waist like a peasant's smock. Disheveled from head to foot, the young man charged on, straight into the roped knot of captives. He held an unsheathed blade in his fist. Caught lounging with dropped stirrups, Garfield's heavy-set captain unhooked the knee draped on his pommel. With town-bred, fashionably bland interest, he held his immediate order to intervene. Every veteran knew how it felt to suffer the wiles of forest barbarians. If a steel-bearing maniac was bent on private vengeance, the escorting men-at-arms would be decidedly inclined to enjoy a bit of fun before they took action in restraint. But the intruder turned his blade to whistling use, not to maim prisoners, but to sever the cordage that yoked them. The captain's bull-throated bellow sheared above the nerve-wracking beat of the mason's mallets. He would sooner see barbarians dead in cold blood than suffer even one to go free. Who is that upstart? By Ath, pull him off. So I apologize if I stumbled a little bit in that. So let's have a look at this first section before I go on to the next one. Now, to set the scene here we have a captain of a guard that is escorting a bunch of barbarian prisoners that are all shackled up and are being brought as slave captives to a location. And someone runs in. So when we look at the sequence of events, we have to try and think of how particular characters will view things. Point of view and control of point of view, and this focalizing through the character is, or can be, I shouldn't say is, can be a really powerful tool for authors to use. And here we have this captain, this unnamed captain, who is escorting these slaves, prospective slaves, and sees some madman run in with a brandished sword. And his first reaction is, let's see how it plays out. Because this clearly gets across his perspective. He does not value these barbarian lives. He doesn't see them as humans. These clansmen are not human to him. They are enemies that are there for entertainment. They are chattel. They are animals that can be killed. He doesn't care. And this comes across so powerfully in this whole sequence, because seeing someone, while you are escorting these captives, seeing someone with a sword brandished running into their midst, if your perspective was to guard them and protect them, you would act immediately. But here we have the captain holding off on his action. And when it becomes clear that this person is not going to kill these captives, then he is suddenly spurred into action. And so the perspective that this captain has, that's what we're seeing here. And it's clearly not the perspective of the character who is running in and doing the freeing. So there are clearly different perspectives at work. And so this is the use of focalization, thinking about the point of view and how that person thinks about and interprets the scene in front of them. If you had an objective, omniscient stance, there wouldn't be such judgment and bias in how the events are being perceived. It would be clearer from the very beginning that the person running in was going to free the prisoners because an omniscient narrator would know that. So let's break down a little bit about what's happening in those first four paragraphs. Garfield's captain twisted in his saddle and paused, as someone he did not recognize plunged headlong into his idle ranks of guardsmen. So the ranks of guardsmen, all of these guards are idle. They are lounging around. They're not at attention. They're not on guard. So that gives you a sense of where they are. They're not in hostile territory. They're in friendly territory, because why else would they be idle, particularly when they are meant to be guarding prisoners? So even with something as subtle as that, because the guardsmen's ranks are described as idle, we actually get a sense of place. We get a sense of the atmosphere and setting, even though this has not been spelled out in the text. A shout followed, and a royal of sudden turbulence. And this is, and again, this is representative of Wurts's writing, using the English language to its fullest to be extraordinarily expressive. And I know it's not to everyone's taste, but a royal of sudden turbulence is such a wonderful turn of phrase. It gets that chaos of what is happening that goes beyond mere disturbance. And it creates a sense of the frisson and friction that has suddenly been created. Then the runner burst through, streaming water and spattered with black mud. So here we have this wonderfully evocative sense of the description of this unnamed character, this runner, because this is someone the guard captain does not recognize. Therefore, we're not getting a name attributed to this person. So it goes from someone he doesn't recognize has plunged headlong into the ranks of guardsmen. Then we get a closer description, or a more accurate description, the runner, now identifying them. So it's not just some random person. We're being given a little bit more in terms of identifier, that they are running. That is how this captain is thinking about them. But then we get this wonderful description: streaming water and spattered with black mud, the sweat limp shirt on his heaving shoulders billowed at the waist like a peasant's smock. So let's break this down. Streaming water and spattered with black mud. We have that usual bias and disdain for dirt and uncleanliness, that the immediate thought, the comparison that this guard captain makes is, here's someone, they are wet, they're covered in splotches of black mud, and their shirt is sweat limp. So they are disheveled. But it heaved from their shoulders, billowed at the waist like a peasant's smock. So this character is making the comparison to someone who is lowborn. They are looking at this person and judging them solely on outward appearance. And because of how they are dressed, because of their state of cleanliness, they appear to be peasants, because peasants are dirty folk. And they don't dress well, they don't dress neatly, they don't present themselves properly. And just with that, you get a sense of not only the arrogance of the captain, but also you get a lot of the presumptions of the society to which the captain belongs. All of those biases, how that train of thought works to create this impression. Peasants wear smocks that billow, and that's a natural thing to think about because they're dirty and wet and unkempt. you can suddenly see the biases and stratification of that society just in the description of how this captain thinks of this unnamed person. And that's when we talk about concise language, when we talk about how writers should be doing multiple things with sentences. Here we have very clear description of what is happening. A captain with a bunch of guards is guarding some prisoners, and a person has run through, and this person is dirty. And yet, in those descriptions of that, clear, this is what's happening. It's very simple and very straightforward. Those descriptions are doing double duty. They're telling us more. They are implying more about the captain's perspective and beliefs, the captain's society, and those societal and cultural beliefs. And all of that is contained in this description. Disheveled from head to foot, the young man charged on straight into the roped knot of captives. So nice, simple, straightforward. We go from unnamed to runner to young man. Each time this unnamed individual, we are getting more accurate and different information about them that is bringing awareness of who this person is closer and closer. We talk about this in terms of psychic distance. The captain still doesn't know who it is, but instead of it just being an unnamed random figure, that unnamed random figure becomes a runner because there's more information available. And then now that he's been paying more attention, the runner is revealed to be a young man. So again, the information is becoming more refined as we go down and as time progresses in the action. And it's an incredibly simple, straightforward technique that so often we overlook, that we as readers, when we're going through stuff like this, we just think, oh, they're just varying how they're referring to the person. And yet when you look at it, there is a clear use of moving that lens closer and closer to the person, revealing more and more about the person as time progresses, as more details are picked up upon, as the point of view character gets more information about the subject of their gaze. And this is when we have a wonderful moment here. And this goes to a structural point, a pacing point, and the use of white space, or again, as I said, in this case, black space. He held an unsheathed blade in his fist. So if you look at the distance between the first paragraph, we have the captain twist around in his saddle. This person has run into the guardsman. That's all in the first sentence. That's a lot happening in the first sentence. A shout followed and a sudden roil of turbulence. And again, that nice use of the comma breaks up the action. So in the first, we have twisted in the saddle and paused. Someone he did not recognize plunged headlong into the ranks of the guardsmen. So we have, he twists, he pauses, then we get a description of the action. And it all happens in the first sentence. It's all happening in a single sort of instant or moment that's being described. Then we get a shout followed and a roil of sudden turbulence. And because of the use of the comma here, it now feels that this is a continuation, an add-on. The shout followed, and then there was a sudden roil of turbulence. So we get the same thing, but it's being used in a different way to create an extending effect. Then the runner burst through, streaming water and spattered with black mud. So again, we have, here is the action, the runner burst through, comma, and now we get, instead of a further action, detail about the action. The sweat-limp shirt on his heaving shoulders billowed at the waist like a peasant smock. This is all description. It's on its own. There's no comma separation here. And this is the moment where the captain is actually thinking about and assessing the person. And so if you think about it, action, 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 one line of description on its own. And so this varies pace. Disheveled from head to foot, description. The young man charged on, straight into the roped knot of captives. So we have description, comma, action, comma, description of action. So you can see, even in this one paragraph that seems to be, it's just description of something, it's a blend of action and description. and it's moving between them. It's using grammar and commas and full stops to signify things, to imply things, all within that. And then this brilliant moment, because now there is a new paragraph and it is a sentence on its own in this new paragraph. He held an unsheathed blade in his fist. Everything happens in the first paragraph, break. Now is a really important sentence. The captain has realized this person that's just run in and is causing all of this disruption, he's just noticed he's holding a sword and that sword is unsheathed. And it's on its own. It's surrounded by black space. And so it gives it a weight and level of import that those previous sentences in the previous paragraph just don't have, because this is isolated. This is on its own. You get that moment of, hang on a sec, he has a sword. And even when we look at this, there could be multiple different ways that Wurts could have chosen to do this. An unsheathed blade could be a naked blade. But given this whole description about him being disheveled, naked, which is quite an evocative way to describe an unsheathed blade, could have led to some confusion about the use of language describing the person or the blade. Now, it's unlikely, but why risk it? So unsheathed. And also, it's unsheathed. It's not a drawn blade. So it's framed in the negative, unsheathed, which shows the natural state that the captain is kind of thinking about swords at the minute. Remember, his men are idle. All of their blades are sheathed. And here is someone with an unsheathed blade. And nicely at the very, very end, in his fist, not his hand. He didn't grasp it. He isn't holding it. He isn't even brandishing it. He held an unsheathed blade in his fist. And that use of the word fist gives a sense of violence, gives a sense of anger and tension, the making of a fist. And it's this one line on its own as its own paragraph. And you see the concentration on it. And now we get the captain's reaction. Caught lounging with dropped stirrups. His stirrups aren't even in the right position to ride forward. That he's relaxing. This, again, a sense that he didn't think action was going to occur. He's not set up for action. He's not set up for violence. He's not set up to suddenly gallop or even canter forward. He's been lounging with dropped stirrups. And Carfield's heavy-set captain unhooked the knee draped on his pommel. So we get this. He's just been idly sitting on his horse, his knee kind of thrown over, that he's kind of just relaxing. And now suddenly he's had to sit up and he is not in the position to deal with, uh-oh, this could be bad. With town-bred, fashionably bland interest, he held his immediate order to intervene. And this can seem slightly incongruous because we just said that suddenly he's seen this threat. But we get this moment where he's sort of sat up, he's looked, and then we remember in the first paragraph, then the runner burst through streaming water and spattered with black mud. He's not attacking the soldiers, he's run through the soldiers. And so we get this processing of the information in real time as we are reading. Every veteran knew how it felt to suffer the wiles of forest barbarians. If a steel-bearing maniac was bent on private vengeance, the escorting men-at-arms would be decidedly inclined to enjoy a bit of fun before they took action in restraint. And we see this transition in real time. He spots the weapon. He immediately sort of sits up and then relaxes again because, and this goes to his point of view, his subjectivity, his perception of these events. These are forest barbarians. These are clansmen, because he doesn't even refer to them as clansmen. He calls them barbarians. He refers to their wiles. He doesn't respect them as humans. He doesn't respect them as people. And now he has a steel-bearing maniac. And yet his immediate inclination, his immediate thought is, well, let him kill a few because that'll entertain the men. And suddenly everything about this conflict is made very apparent. This is how someone who is a captain in some sort of guard, who has been charged with escorting prisoners, thinks of those prisoners under his charge. He doesn't regard them as people. He doesn't equate them as humans deserving of respect in life. They are barbarians and they can be killed for fun. And yet, when you think about it, this is a very straightforward description of someone sitting on a horse. They see someone run in through their guards with a sword. That's basically all that's been described. And yet so much is given away, is implied, is suggested, is communicated to the reader through word choice, through the structure and grammar of the sentences, and through the use of that space. And then we get the next line on its own. And again, it has to do with the intruder. And it has to do with that moment where the captain is suddenly reevaluating the intruder. But the intruder turned his blade to whistling use, not to maim prisoners, but to sever the cordage that yoked them. The first moment that was on its own, that stood out on its own, hang on a sec, that guy has a sword. Oh no, wait, he's gone past my men. He's going towards the barbarians. That's all fine. He could kill a... Hang on a sec. He's not killing the barbarians. He's trying to free them. And because, again, it's on its own, it stands out, it emphasizes it, it gives it weight and importance. And you realize the shock that this captain is feeling. And now we get the sudden action. The captain's bull-throated bellow. So look at that alliteration, the bull-throated bellow. Sheared above the nerve-wracking beat of the mason's mallets. He would sooner see barbarians dead in cold blood than suffer even one to go free. Who is this upstart? By Ath, pull him off. He is roused to action and anger by the mere thought that someone could free these captives. Where the thought that someone would kill the captives, oh yeah, that'll be entertaining. Free them, oh quick, someone act. This is the power of using that subjective perspective and the power of understanding how your eye moves down through the page, understanding the psychology of the character and using those moments to break up the action. This is what I love about Wurts's writing. And again, I will say, like, some people do not enjoy this style. Some people find it overly elaborate. But there is such beauty and power and technique here that I really enjoy reading this. So let's have a look at two more paragraphs from slightly later on in the extract. The fair rescuer flung back a wild fall of hair, hedged in by bared weapons that licked in on all sides through the dusty, dazed bodies of the captives. He rammed his sword in dry earth, then clawed loose his cuff ties, peeled back filthy cloth, and raised his wrists before him. Well, chain me first then, he raged, a shocking glacial blue against his flushed summer tan. His eyes held a warning to freeze thought. No man born in this realm shall be lashed like an animal before I should suffer the same. Fiends plague my mother, a philanthropist. The guard captain rolled his gaze skyward, pleased to deliver the order. He stretched his toes and recovered his stirrups, unmoved through the commotion as his men swooped to spread eagle the rash idiot amid his coffle of clansmen. So obviously, like this, I quite like because of the humor in it, but we'll get to that in a second. So let's look at the first sentence of that paragraph. Now, if you notice in the previous ones, a lot of those sentences were short, one or two clauses, very short sentences. We were moving through it very, very quickly. Here, we start with a short one. The fair rescuer flung back a wild fall of hair. And there's a nice fair flung fall, which, some people don't like alliteration, but this is not all together. It's giving that moment, that flick of hair, that wildness of motion, almost like a Timotei ad, one of those shampoo ads where they cascade their hair back. It's a very performative way of moving the hair out of the face so your face is fully visible, but it is highly performative. It is very melodramatic, overly dramatic, hedged in by bared weapons. So remember earlier on, I had said about the difference in unsheathed, and now we have bared. So just that slight change, that slight alteration gives the action a slightly different connotation and feel to it. Hedged in, so on all sides, and you get this sense of all of these blade-like sort of branches that are poking at them. Hedged in, because although hedged in means almost like fenced off, but with hedging, it's not a single smooth surface or a regular surface like a fence. It's full of little branches that poke out. So even with that, hedged in by bared weapons, that licked in on all sides, this movement up and down of these blade points moving around through the dusty, dazed bodies of the captives. And again, that emphasis on the d, the alliteration of that D sound. Through the dusty, dazed bodies of the captives. He rammed his sword in dry earth, then clawed loose his cuff ties, peeled back filthy cloth, and raised his wrists before him. Look at how long that sentence is. Hedged in by bared weapons that linked on all sides through the dusty, dazed bodies of the captives, he rammed his sword in dry earth, then clawed loose his cuff ties, peeled back filthy cloth, and raised his wrists before him. This is all a big, melodramatic, dramatic, overt sequence of actions that are all part of one performance. He throws back his hair, and then in this, he rams his sword into the earth, claws off the cuff ties, peels it off. You get a sense of the drama of it. And then he raged, well, chain me first then. How do we know that this is performative? Because these people are already chained up. How can he be chained first? This is performance. It is melodramatic performance. It is playing to the crowd, to the spectacle, to the audience. What is this person's motivation? We don't know yet. We're not inside their mind. We're not getting that. But we can start to infer this person's character, their motives, their goals, because look at how the information is being communicated. A shocking glacial blue against his flushed summer tan, his eyes held a warning to freeze thought. And so here we get this moment right in the middle. Something distinct, something very distinctive, the color of his eyes. And it's not, oh, his eyes were sapphire blue, glacial, shocking. These are cold eyes, calculating eyes against his flushed summer tan. And again, we often associate tans with looking healthy. And so we get that summer tan suggesting warmth and softness and nice bronze. Natural, by the way, natural color contrast of that sort of bronzy color is blue. So it forms an even neater contrast if you're visualizing it. But in contrast to a summer tan with all of the connotations of summer, we have shocking glacial blue, which makes the contrast even more overt. No man born in this realm shall be lashed like an animal before I should suffer the same. And this is dramatic, melodramatic performance, because clearly all of these people have been lashed up like this. Prisoners are lashed up like this. So why is this person saying this? What are they doing? This is clearly performance. Then we have the moment that always makes me laugh. Fiends plague my mother, a philanthropist. And we get that, fiends plague my mother. That's a very polite way of some of the more modern sayings from our world, some contemporary sayings in our world that people sometimes rope their own mothers into. But it gives a sense of the fantasy world. Fiends plague. It's not a natural way that we would say it. So you get the fantasy language is being embedded into how someone curses reflexively. The thing they reach for, fiends. Not the devil take you. No, fiends. So that's a nice little thing. And what is this person complaining about? Oh my God, this person is a philanthropist. Oh, they are the worst. Again, this gives you an insight into this worldview, the captain's worldview in their society. This idea of philanthropists being do-gooders, tree hugging lefty liberals who, say we shouldn't mistreat people. Oh, philanthropists. Oh my God, this is terrible. And the guard captain rolled his gaze skyward. And you have that, the rolling of the eyes. Oh no, it's another one of them. Suddenly, all of the tension, the fear, this person was wielding a sword and this is all going to go horribly wrong. And now it's tension has been diffused because the guard captain is now eye rolling and realizes there isn't a threat here. This is just another one of those people who, is a do-gooder. And he is pleased to deliver the order. He stretched his toes and recovered his stirrups. And so we returned to that very beginning where we had found out that his stirrups weren't in the right place, that he wasn't sitting in his saddle properly. And now he is righting himself. This has all happened very, very quickly. And we're sort of returning to that moment of readiness. He stretched his toes, recovered his stirrups, unmoved through the commotion as his men swooped to spread eagle the rash idiot amid his coffle of clansmen. And again, judicious use of alliteration gives emphasis to those things. And sure, if every sentence was jammed full of alliteration, then it might become overbearing. But his coffle of clansmen, you can get a sense of the sound, the feel of those words. And so hopefully in going through this, you can see how even in a short extract, sentence length and structure vary. The use of the white space to emphasize things, the use of subjective perspective, the use of even a description of someone else's actions, how they are described can reveal a lot about the characterization and how we can interpret those actions. This is fantastic writing. Now, as I keep saying, it may not be to your preference. And no one has a problem with that. No one ever has a problem with you. I don't enjoy this. But if you said that this writing is bad, then we run into an issue because the command of technique here is really, really good. Plenty of different techniques being used. They are being used properly. They are being used with intent. They are communicating clear ideas that all build on one another. This is clearly good writing. And that is always a point of contention when we discuss things, that we conflate, I like this, this is good. I don't like this, this is bad. Conflating those things is very often a massive mistake. But if you enjoyed this, if you enjoyed Janny Wurts' writing, I highly recommend this series. It really is enthralling me at the minute. Enthralling, obviously, being the word that you want to use when discussing a section about people being put in chains and held captive. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you for your continued support, and I will see you in the next one.